Winter and Construction, written by Haeli Picard. If you're from the Midwest region of the United States, you know that there are two seasons, winter and construction. Once the temperature is regularly above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, the road crews start to repair the roads from the long, often snowy winter. I was stuck out at my dad's house in rural Illinois. I had lost my job a few months back and I had been forced to move back in with my family until I was able to save up enough of my money. Unfortunately, the new job that I had secured was about an hour commute without traffic. When construction season began, my commute extended by a half an hour. When they found structural problems on one of the two bridges into St. Louis, my commute became a 2-hour trek. 2 hours of driving was ridiculous. I turned to Google Maps to find a better way. The first day was not too bad. I looked over the meandering route composed of mostly back roads until I got to the Bellevue, East St. Louis area. Now, I have a terrible sense of direction, but the route to the office seemed to backtrack on several of the twists and turns. I didn't see many other cars on the road, which was fairly typical of county highways. These roads were barely wide enough for one car. I got to work in about an hour and a half. It's not ideal, but it was still better than taking the main roads. It rained that night. Not only did it ruin my plans to watch the Eta Aquarides meteor shower, but big drops hammered my father's modular home, keeping me awake much longer than I had planned. Loud claps of thunder rattled the windows and woke me several times throughout the night. I was going to need a lot of coffee to get me to work in the morning, and I started worrying about washed-out roads. I got up early, anticipating that my commute may take 2 hours again due to the water on the roads. After downing half a pot of coffee, I put the other half in my Yeti and I started up Google Maps. It looked like my route would still be the same as the previous day, but I was skeptical. The river was already high before the storm, and I zoomed out to look at different routes. The other two routes displayed on my screen were 20 and 35 minutes longer. I resigned myself to taking back roads again, even though I was worried about unmarked detours. I turned onto the first county highway. The ditches weren't as full of water as I had feared, and I was happy that I could have at least a few more miles of paved road before worrying about a detour. Google Maps surprised me by asking me to make a left turn onto a single-laned road with no name. It was paved, but I didn't see any power lines going along that way. As someone who's been driving on rural roads my whole life, it made me concerned. Roads that led somewhere usually had power lines. I knew that I was coming up to the Kaskaskia River, so this might be the detour that I was dreading. My commute shortened by 10 minutes when I made the turn. Google Maps told me that I needed to drive another 12 miles to reach the state highway that would take me to the interstate. The road continued to twist and turn, but I noticed that I wasn't going through any intersections, and that was odd. The road was no longer paved. There were still no power lines. Goldenrod and Queen Anne's lace grew thick in a field to my left. Dense woods were to my right. I kept an eye on the woods. White-tailed deer tended to jump out at the most inopportune moments. A rusty road sign, faded almost to white from the elements, announced a right curve ahead. I slowed to about 20 miles per hour, and I tapped my horn 3 times. If there was oncoming traffic, I wanted to make sure that they knew that I was coming. And I was concerned that the thick trees and brush would hide my tiny economy car from any oncoming traffic. A large movement in the woods caught my eye. I slammed my car to a stop, concerned there were deer about to bound onto the roadway. The woods went silent. I looked at the road ahead of me and noticed that it curved into the woods. Some deep, primal instinct screamed that I shouldn't go forward. This wasn't the first time that my anxiety had spiked on a country road. The feeling of isolation when you don't see another car or human for miles can play tricks on your mind. This felt different. I stared at the woods, trying to figure out what I had seen out of the corner of my eye earlier. I backed up about 30 yards, giving plenty of space for any cars that might come speeding around the hairpin curve, and I turned my car off. If I turned around, I would definitely be late for work. If I was going to listen to Google, I was going to need to calm myself down a bit. There was no need to have a panic attack in the middle of the woods. 5 minutes passed. Every time I reached up to start my car again and start driving, the hair on my arms would stand up. 10 minutes passed, and I picked up my phone to call my boss and let her know that I would be late. I noticed that the state highway was less than 2 miles down the road. Just as I was about to make the call, a truck passed on my left. I decided that I would just follow the truck into the woods, and that would help my anxiety. I started up my car and I put it into drive, trying not to let too much space between myself and the truck. The truck bounced on the road and disappeared around the second curve. The gravel gave way to mud. I was concerned about getting stuck, but I figured that I could just tail the truck and turn around if the road got too messy. It was only 2 miles. I slowed and took the second curve. A bright orange trucker cap and single rubber boot caught my eye on the side of the road. This must be a popular dumping area, I thought, as the side of the road was littered with more debris. Mostly clothing, shoes, and car parts. I felt the ground under the car shift, and I braked once more, concerned that I would end up in the ditch as my car spun around, sloshing in the mud. When I came to a stop, the truck was visible in my rearview mirror. Something about the size of a bull mastiff was beating on the windshield. Whatever it was difficult to look at. Something about it was wrong. The thing was covered in too many legs, and it moved like it couldn't decide if it were a fish or an insect or something worse. I thought of scrolling through the ad-filled articles boasting the world's top 10 weirdest animals. Its skin, or was it an exoskeleton, was clearly tough enough to crack through the terrified occupants of the truck. The shadows played tricks on my eyes. No matter how I looked at it, I couldn't decide what color it was. Blue? Brown? Maybe gray. I felt nausea, and my eyes unfocused as the sting of involuntary tears brought my mind and my vision back into focus. The old man in the driver's seat was screaming. I held my breath as he reached in front of his passenger, a woman who I assumed was his wife, to grab something out of the glove box. The screaming man discharged a handgun into the nightmare, emptying an entire clip. An otherworldly scream came from the creature, and a second monstrosity snaked into the bed and headed to the back of the cab, scraping its segmented limbs on the back window, trying to get to the 2 people in the truck. I didn't need to stick around to see anything more. I eased on the gas, trying to not get stuck in the mud. I slid my small car as fast as I could around the curves. As I exited the last curve, I overshot my exit from the woods, and my car slid into the field. Some sort of goo splattered the passenger side windows, and I heard a few loud, wet popping noises. A smaller, underdeveloped version of whatever was probably going to eat me in the next 30 seconds bounced over my windshield. as I heard another loud pop and exited the field. I drove as fast as I could, looking for power lines to follow and trying to dial 911. I took a screenshot of Google Maps to make sure that I knew where to send the cops. My phone finally connected to 911, and I found a paved road and parked. As the cars flew by, I waited for the police and wrote down all of this for you. I gave an approximate location of the creatures to the authorities. Black smoke is coming from the direction that I just came from, and I can only assume that they're burning the field and the woods that held whatever attacked that truck. Addendum: it's almost bedtime, and I'm still stuck on the side of the road. My boss is furious, and I'm not sure I'm going to have a job tomorrow. I'm not even sure I'm going to be available to work tomorrow. I couldn't tell her what actually happened. I guess that I could ask the CDC for a doctor's note. See what I did there? And I feel really guilty about leaving the couple in the truck. I don't think that I could have done anything for them, though. That thing didn't seem to slow down from a handgun, and it called in reinforcements. I don't think I'm ever going to lose memory of two people getting monster murdered. I think that that's something that stays with you. I certainly don't plan on sleeping anytime soon. The CDC impounded my goo-covered car, and I'm waiting to do more interviews with law enforcement. I overheard one of the CDC guys talking with a man in a suit, maybe from the FBI. I don't know. They were talking about meteor showers, and a creature that could breathe nitrogen and communicate and view the world via radio waves. Cell phones, GPS, and nearly all other forms of communication run on radio waves. We send radio waves to space. Who knows what's listening out there? If you're reading this at work or home, you're probably on Wi-Fi. And guess what? Wi-Fi uses radio waves. The more I think about it, the more I now realized how screwed we all are. Don't use your GPS if you're in southern Illinois. Avoid back roads. Don't trust what your phone is telling you. I nearly lost my life to something indescribable. I don't know what's happening, but I know that it feels like the beginning of the end. I can't stop thinking about the creatures, and I swear I hear a humming in my head that wasn't there before. Some of the men in suits are waving me over to their SUV. I assume to take me to the closest police station for interviews. Anyway, good luck. If there are more out there, we're going to need it.